And also, let me see. Oh, I was gonna share it too. Wait, where is that? Oh, share it to Facebook. That's what it is. And oh, and let everybody in. Admit all.
And Mac will be able to spotlight the work.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Once everybody's in.
Look at all these nice friends coming online here.
Betsy!
That's so nice. It's nice to see you, Betsy. I haven't seen you in a long time.
I know, I've been thinking a lot about you.
What?
Oh, yes. Oh, wait a second here.
Hey, Nancy and
It'll be nice being retired. You can have that.
Sure.
just so everybody knows, this is being recorded, and we're on Shoebox Arts Facebook Live.
Probably there's some more people will be coming.
Yeah, there's a couple more here. Yes, and let's see. Aha. I hope everybody is doing well and staying safe and healthy.
Oh, yeah.
That's good.
Environmental studies about Steve Rowell's exhibition, Uncanny Sensing Remote Valleys, which is
Muting them. Oops, where is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think before we even start, thank you, Christine. As I a couple of months into this, finally hosted a Zoom, and when the peek behind the curtain, it's like, oh my God, there's like pop-ups and pings and waiting rooms, and like stuff doesn't work, and people are texting you, but you've turned your phone off already because audio, and so just like. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the Wizard of Action back there. I appreciate it.
When what was it? I was doing an artist talk or something, and or maybe it was even call and response. No, it was for my professional development workshop that I did. I'm like, I really need to have like an assistant to do all that stuff. I'm like, yeah, because like when you're trying to talk and then, people are, popping in or asking questions. Yeah, it's hard. Okay, we are live on Facebook, and this is being recorded for anybody just coming on. Let's see. And let's go ahead and get started, and I'll just let people come in as they oh, thanks, Nancy, as they enter. Great to see everybody here. And again, I hope everybody's staying safe and healthy during all of this. I'm Christine Shoemaker with Shoebox Arts, and we are really, really proud to work with Pam Douglas and have her show at Tag Gallery, or be able to talk about and look at the show at Tag Gallery. And Pam is here today with art critic Shana and Dambrot. And they're going to have a conversation and a walkthrough about the exhibition. Pam, and I'm going to ask Pam to start off and introduce and talk about Sanctuary. For those especially who haven't seen it, don't know about it, it's been a multi-year process and a multi-year project. And Pam, I will let you take it away and give us like an introduction. And then, and after you do that, we're not going to do the walkthrough yet, but I'll pin Mac, who is going to be doing the walkthrough, and that way everybody could see it. So go for it, Pam.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this. Sanctuary is an immersive installation that is an environment for people to come and have a good sense of the journey of refugees all over the world. It uses both two-dimensional and three-dimensional works that, as I continued the series, became increasingly sculptural and increasingly something that you experience more than just see. So that's why I hope that as many of you as possible can actually go to the gallery, because this thing is huge. There's about 50 pieces in something like 5,000 to 6,000 square feet across 4 adjoining rooms. So it's a little hard to get the impact of it on the screen, but we sure are going to try. And with the help from Shana, So Shana, take it away.
Hey, okay. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. And yeah, it's true. I mean, one of the amazing things that has kept, I know, my personal soul and the soul of many of you guys going this is that since September, we've been able to go to art galleries by appointment. And this is one of those. And I am a big advocate of this, although I am really all about like being home, wearing masks, like washing my groceries. Definitely, I get it. When you're in a gallery, especially one of this size, and you've made an appointment, you're basically in there by yourself. The person that runs the gallery is there, but they could be 40 feet away from you. Everyone's really respectful. So I just want to put that out there for anyone who's sort of hearing us say, go see the show and thinking, what? That actually I'm a believer in the safety and, you know, the reward of continuing to be able to see certain exhibitions in public. And so I encourage everyone to go and do it. And one, I mean, art is always better viewed in person, but this now kind of leads into the conversation. But, you know, in a case like this, it's not only about the experience and, you know, sort of like the path that you walk from piece to piece around each, and then you make your way back through the rooms, and there's a real progression in some ways to this story, but also because one of the most interesting things about this work is the use of materials in creating it, and so you really get the sort of texture of all of this burlap and wood and ceramic elements from nature, often all in one piece at a time. Then as you move toward the back, you see vignettes, families, and there's a story that has to do with Doctors Without Borders, and there's assemblage and mixed media and installation work. And so and the scale is also quite affecting, because as you're there, it's very close to real, you know, to life size. And so you really get this kind of physical involvement with each person or family's portrait as you move through. And you really start to be able to pull out details like a child's toy will be a toy, as opposed to, say, necessarily a drawing of the toy. And that's going to be my first question for Pam, because one of the things that I absolutely love about this are the choices that you're making in terms of some of the work is drawn, painted, rendered, and then at times that will come out and off of the work in this kind of like Rauschenberg bed painting kind of way, where suddenly, instead of drawing the sack, it becomes burlap. There's wood and, you know, objects. And there's this one that's like tiny little pink baby slippers. That's just heartbreaking. And so I'm just curious, like, for you, what you mentioned earlier, that the work is becoming increasingly sculptural. Like, I would love, and I think everyone, for you to talk about that a little bit. Like, what was the thing that really sent you in that direction? Because I know there was the story to tell, and then they became so much more than drawings. And I would love to just hear you talk about that.
Yeah, I feel that I was actually compelled to come forward. I wanted to reach people viscerally as well as theoretically. I love the drawings. I always start with the drawings because I love the faces. But some of the hands, even from the earliest part, reach out past the canvas. And I meant for that to actually reach people. As we come where I see what's on screen right now is the final room, which is entirely three-dimensional. Although we're now looking at the school, little one-room schoolhouse, where all the children are drawn. But look at that, that's a map. Those are notebook papers. Their desks are made of bark. There is nothing, there happens to be a chicken there, but never mind that. Oh, and here is the laundry. That's a net I found in an old alley. The children's faces are drawn, but they've got real old clothes from my, just family stuff. The water that they're washing in is an old silk painting. As a matter of fact, I've repurposed everything I could find. What we're looking at down below the little girls in the washing is used coffee bean bags, and they're all through the show. And the meaning of that is that nothing is without value. Nothing is a throwaway, and no body is a throwaway. So this repurposing and the idea that it's all part of the continuity of nature with human life. And oh, by the way, we're now looking at, I'm interrupting myself, we're now looking at those wonderful white footprints on the floor. I love these because, and they were suggested to me actually by the gallery, because not only do they move you from the front of the show to the back, but they're all sizes. So it's not only the barefoot walkers that we've seen since the very first part, but also, little children's feet who have made it into this back room where there are actual shelters. So somebody survived.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this drawing. I mean, it's so haunting. It's so simple, and yet it's so impactful, right? And you could spend time on this and go in, and then you see the figures, and you see these small groups of figures, most of whom are trying their best, right? To sort of like live their life in this environment. You see kids that like, they can't help it. They're going to run around a little because that's what kids do. And you start to see not like the final finished, okay, we did it, utopia, but like the first step towards something like stability and safety. And that's kind of where this show ends up, is that, perhaps a corner might be turning. Perhaps this is the dawn that comes after the darkest, so that there, you end up with something that is both hopeful and still, poignant and heartbreaking, even while it's more hopeful than it was. So it's a really interesting emotional journey that you're going on, because you really are still kind of left in the middle of it with like a sense that it might be okay, right? Help is coming, that kind of thing, just as a narrative. But I also love what you said about not throwing anything away or everything having a value. I mean, the coffee beans are, on the one hand, that's a symbol of like exploited labor in other countries, and, our participation in an economic system that continues to allow that. In another sense, it's like when you've got to leave your home, you're from that situation, you're not buying a cute luggage set online. You're right. I mean, I don't mean to joke about it, but it's kind of like, now that's been reclaimed from that sort of oppressive bad end of the capitalist stick into something that can be used as, a modest shelter, or, luggage, transportation when it's time to go. And then on the other end of it, you have you as an artist continuing to honor what that material represents. But then when you're using it in the work, you're not just painting on it, you're letting it also be burlap within the story of the image. So you have a lot of different things happening at once with like 3 or 4 kinds of mediums, which I also find really inventive throughout the show. So it's like, yeah, there's a lot happening, but it's like burlap, canvas, paint, found objects, a little ceramic, it's still very simple in terms of your foundation.
Yeah, I wanted it to be humble. And I also wanted there to be no distraction from the beauty of the faces. I'm not against beautiful, pretty painted surfaces. They have their place in the world and you can love them. For this show, I think that monochromatic palette and the sense that we're being very direct about the image serves what it's trying to say, serves the impact.
Yeah.
So,
I love that raft. I mean, that's the perfect example. It's like,
this one we're
these
looking
are what, if you were going to build a raft,
at.
that's what you would build it out of. So yeah, this is a sculpture in a fine art gallery, but it's okay, it's maybe not big enough or as waterproof as you would like it to be if you were going to use it, but it's fundamentally kind of partly what it is as well as what it's depicting or representing. Then you have the symbolism. So it you know, that's one of, I think, the most perfect examples of how that, and you, I know, for those of you who aren't aware, Pam walks around her neighborhood dragging dead carcasses home behind her. Like, if I lived in her neighborhood, I'd be like, oh, there's that crazy Pam again. That tree's twice her size. How is she even doing that? And this goes on like on a regular basis, right?
Yeah.
So when she says, you know, and you're like, found logs, who finds logs? Pam walks and collects and gathers. And so that to me is also that energy of you doing that, I think, is part of the energy that stays inside the work and the story of what's going on in the work as well. Like there's a little bit of rhyming there, just a little bit. And so I think, you know, that idea of nothing going to waste is something that's operational in your studio as well in its own way.
Yeah, it really is. We just passed a raft that had bark on the bottom, and that is exactly what you're talking about. That bark fell off a tree in my neighborhood, and I thought, "Ooh, that's beautiful."
Right. I'm not kidding.
Of course, you remember my previous show, which was made of palm fronds too.
Yes.
They're
Literally twice your size. People, I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah, yeah. What we're looking at here at the left are these drowned figures, because we hope everybody makes it. But these, a lot of people on the rafts in the Mediterranean especially don't make it. And these drowned figures have symbolic resonance with not just refugees, but it goes all the way back to the Middle Passage, and it goes all the way to all those who have tried to survive elements everywhere. And the mural we're looking at the back, there are two 36-foot murals in the show. The gallery is so big that even a 36-foot mural doesn't actually reach the whole wall. But I wanted the rafts to come out forward from something, not just a white wall. And in the back, in the final room that we saw a little bit ago, and I see Mac is walking back there again, there is a second mural, which actually, here we come, we're walking back into the room with the shelters. And here is the other 36-foot mural. And it starts with red and darkness, and it goes, it's a little hard to see in the distance here, but it goes all the way to a blue sky and some green grass. And that's all part of the hope I would like to infuse with this show. By the time we get to the schoolroom, we've got a blue sky, and you can't quite see it here, but that's actually green grass. So there's also, if we want to go, Mac, if you go left a little bit and look at the edge of this tent here, left a little, and we can see these pieces of canvas that are over the shelters are, again, repurposed old paintings. This has fallen apart, which I wanted to. It's actually a part of the mural that's in the front that tore, and so now it's here. It's again, nothing gets thrown away. And if we come close into this mural, we'll see some of the how rich the texture is. That's a landscape back there. If you go to right a little bit, and yeah, this is okay. This is a piece of the mural at the back, which is also very much dimensional, and then there's junk on the ground, which I wanted there to be junk on the ground. I mean, some water bottles and stuff, because these campsites are not pretty. They're not refined. There's stuff. I mean, who's going to pick up the trash? Nobody's picking up the trash. They have no sanitation. They have no nothing. And they don't have medical help, which is why I want to use this show also to support Doctors Without Borders, because that's one of the very few entities that go into these camps for medical help. And here's another one. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and
So
I
this is
love
the
that.
clinic back here.
Yeah, the clinic, and then there's another part of this room that there's like a table that's like a micro like reading room with literature from Sans Frontières, and it's so you know, I loved that note at the end of like, okay, you've just had this very assertively, you know, artistic experience, right? Like no one would mistake that for anything other than a fine art installation.
Mhm.
And then at the back, it's like, oh, here's the real world that we've just been thinking about together for the last, you know, moments. And oh, you've been walking through this exhibition, putting your hand on your heart and thinking, God, this is so moving. I want to help. What can I do? Okay, here's what you can do right here. Let me make it easy for you. And I love that infusion of just like a little bit of a call to action right at the end, so that there's no mistaking, like, this is not just a powerless reflection, but actually has an energy of activism or a call to action sitting very comfortably at the end of the experience. And I really appreciated that. I thought that was just a really generous, but also helpful and probably strategic. Like, who didn't take some of that literature or
Mhm.
follow them on Twitter or something, sign up for a mailing list at least in that room.
Yeah.
And you know, and I love the idea that that's something that art can do. And actually, this is one of the things we were going to talk about a little bit. You know, the conversation, what is or is not political art, I think is helpful and interesting. But the reality is that it's not really a binary necessary. It's not, it is or it isn't. Those two things bleed into each other, especially, I would humbly submit, in the last 4 years, especially in the last year. But you know what? It didn't start there, obviously. This has been going on, you know, more or less forever, certainly at several key times in recent memory. And so I feel like that idea of artists, you know, using moments, you know, to call attention. When this started, it was as bad as it could be. This was a few years ago. That guy whose name I hope to never actually say, y'all know who I'm talking about, had just started this insane policy at our border. Although this exhibition, as you pointed out a couple times, and especially with the choice of Doctors Without Borders, is a global situation. People walked from Syria to because of climate change. I mean, this is not unique to the US-Mexico border, but okay, we live here. And that policy was very impactful in this community. And a bunch of artists did amazing projects all summer long trying to raise awareness about what was going on with ICE. And so there's a really rich community of artists kind of working that way. But of course, as of 2 days ago, we're finally starting to dig out from some of that. Some of these policies are being reversed, you know, all right. And so I feel like we happen to be in this moment that's like the start of hopefulness or the end of hopelessness or something kind of liminal, which is kind of where the show is. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit too about, you know, as you stay with this project, what is, where are you with where are you with where we are now on these issues?
I agree with everything you just observed. I also feel very much situated in the world rather than only this country. Some of the refugee camps are more than 10 years old. Some of them, we saw in that drawing back there. Oh, by the way, what I see on screen here are these little portraits.
Yeah, I want to talk about those next.
Okay. What was I about to say? What did I start saying?
That you started this.
Yes.
10 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, we saw in that drawing, which by the way, on screen here, it's hard to see how the size of anything. That little drawing, it's not little, that drawing of the tents that Shana talked about a while ago is 6 feet wide. It looks like it's tiny, but it's actually 6 feet wide. It took me like a month to do, and because every one of those tents is specific.
You're like 3 feet wide, tall. You're 3 feet tall.
6 feet wide and 5 feet tall. Oh, I'm 3 feet tall? No, I'm better than that.
No, I'm teasing you. I'm always so impressed by it because you are such a spark plug at, the real definition of like power comes in small packages, and then to see the epic scale that you're working on is genuinely impressive. So,
well, it's
my
not,
way of saying that.
Yeah, it's not so easy actually. This the reason I wanted to add this drawing, and it was like one of the very latest things I did in the show, was I realized that, it looks like there are only eight refugee tents in the world. And I'm saying, wait a minute, some of these have thousands of habitats where people there are children who have spent their whole lives growing up in one of these tents. And what is their future? And this is really everywhere. It's the Rohingya. It's what's went on from North Africa through the Mediterranean to Greece and Italy. It's certainly Syria disaster, Yemen. I mean, it's really everywhere, and is very, very big. So yes, thank goodness we now have a little bit of maybe breathing in this country. There is so much further to go because it's not just violence or politics, it's climate change. A lot of the reason populations are on the move is that people are starving. Drought, floods, we know about the fires here, but the crop failures, what are you going to do? I mean, look at these shoes here. We'll talk about these shoes in a minute. If you can't feed your family, you need to get up and go. And a lot of these images also are in specific women with their children. Just had to leave for survival. So there are a lot of women, and men too, but a lot of women. We were looking down at shoes a minute ago. If we could tilt down one more time. This pile of shoes is another one of those echoes. This was from the earliest installation of the earliest iteration of this show. But here they are again, because they're echoes of the Underground Railroad, certainly the apocalypse in the Europeans, shoes left behind from anybody who didn't make it, or even those who did. There are shoes in the desert, in the Arizona desert, of people who the shoes got left behind. I don't know what happened to the people. They probably didn't make it. And I think a pile of shoes like that is very impactful without it being somebody. And I like the idea of those little pink shoes on the top with some child who, in my imagination, dressed up to go to this new home. And, you hope she made it.
Yeah. I mean, you know, and shoes, I think you're right. It's one of the more evocative, you know, image objects, especially the kids, you know, it's, I mean, even in regular, you know, like not even in this context, you're driving on the freeway and you see one sneaker and you have to, you think one shoe or your shoes is such an odd thing to be separated from. And in the context like this, it immediately denotes tragedy or loss, even if it's the simple act of your stuff got too heavy. So the pretty pink shoes were the least practical, so they got left behind. Even the most optimistic version of how those shoes got abandoned is still really heartbreaking.
You mentioned,
And yet,
yeah.
it's but because it's a symbol, you know, it's something, I think that's universal, right? Like there's no one that won't understand what kind of event that is. And so I think that's one of the more direct kind of poignant moments within the story.
You mentioned about what you see driving, and I do want to, you know, make that translation to, yeah, it's global and it's refugees, but you know what? There are people in shelters, in tents right here in Los Angeles. And it speaks to that too. It speaks to being unhoused.
Yeah.
And it speaks to what does it take to survive and what is humanity worth when the person maybe doesn't have money or resources or education or other things. And so I do mean for those tents, especially at the back, to have that larger metaphoric sense.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's really powerful because through the use of objects, they're sort of like, the object is sort of like the spoke of a wheel. And so, you know, you can, from there, you can think globally, or like, I'm coming to you right now from 5th and Main in downtown Los Angeles. So, you know, and everything in between that and the literal global quality. But also in being global, you're tapping into the universality of this kind of experience for far too many of our fellow humans, that we see and that we never see. And, you know, I think that that's a really incredible thing to be able to do, is to tie something that is present in the daily life of people here to people literally on the other side of the world. And what you said about there being so many different reasons. And that actually is one of the questions I wanted to ask too. And this was, sorry to make Mac, like, you're just like getting like your steps in today. I hope you got your Fitbit on. We're sending you all over the place. But in terms of going from that macro to then the individual, for me, I feel like the separating just on the wall, the way they're installed, of each piece, be it a portrait or a small family group, really gives it the sense of portraiture as well. So that as a whole, you're addressing the dynamic. But because of the way that the exhibition's organized here, and then with the single faces in the other room, there's also an element of like portrait of an individual, right? You're not just considering, you know, this group of people. You're with one human being at a time, one small family at a time, as you move through the show. And I am curious, I don't know the answer to this, but just to say, like, who are the people? Do you work with photographs, imagination, memory? Like, who are they individually?
Yeah. First, yes, I want the show to be intimate. There is a lot that goes on in like big statistics, and it starts to mean nothing. You know, millions of people are starting. Well, I don't know any of those millions, you know. So I wanted it to be personal from minute one. How I draw the faces. Mac, if you could go into the room with the little prints. There's a room here. Yeah, there's some on the wall and there's some all on these walls too. these are the original drawings, all photos of the original drawings. Some of them are in earlier stages that were later refined, and some of them are just pictures of the way they finally came out. And here's a case where you see the original sketch was at the left, and then we see got more refined, and then a little more, and now she's one of the walking figures. I have reference photos that I found just in photojournalism, but in no case am I actually using a portrait, a picture. I also don't have any models, and there's no real people. So what happens is that I'll have the general pose from something that suggests what I want to do. And I'll know if it's a man or a woman or facing right or left or whatever. But then I'm working with a charcoal pencil. So this is very small and it's very, again, close and intimate. It's just a pencil, charcoal pencil on raw linen. And there's nothing else there. There's no color, there's nothing. And I start moving it. And there's something that actually happens, which is that someone starts to come through the drawing. Now, this didn't happen like, oh, here's two more, which are two phases, an earlier and a later version, and there's some more. That it's built, of course, on a lifetime of an art practice, so it doesn't come out of nowhere. And having studied life drawing and whatever historically. But basically, these are like people coming out of the canvas because they want to be known. And then I refine them. There are times when I will refer to an anatomy book. Things like positions of hands are always difficult, so I'll look that up. But no photo, no model, nothing. It's just they've been coming to me. And that's the way I start each of these. Before I build any construction, the face is always first. And then they tell me where they want to be. And sometimes I'm surprised. Some of these are really just small pieces. There's a kid up there, who's one of the smaller figures in the schoolhouse, that one second to right on the top. It's not even a major portrait, but they all have value. Even in the raft pictures, the wall hung raft pictures, there's some really tiny images there, but no two are the same person.
No, and that's true. I mean, and that's part of the reason I was asking, because it's like the faces are very individualistic and their features and their expression, and then they're not repeated. So I'm thinking you really get to like a who are they, because there's such a depth of personality and emotion and from and nuance and and different inflections in from figure to figure. And like you said, even like the little kids, you see half their face or something, but they're still like fully in there.
Yeah.
And I find that really like magical at almost like a goosebump kind of level, hearing you talk about how they're conjured for you and come through to you from within the work. Like, that's another conversation that we would have to have, like, first of all, after sunset for sure. But there really is like, what the thing you are trying to generate, one of the things is a sense of interconnectedness between humanity, right? You, me, these folks, their families, all of us, like, being halfway around the world is no excuse. We're all connected. And so I find it really plausible that energy is happening for you alone in the studio, feeling connected to them one by one as they emerge into the work. I find that really very moving, because it really is like you would describe a process of portraiture, except they aren't there with you. And I find that really fascinating. Just like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to make everybody go down that rabbit hole with me, but we'll talk, because I absolutely love what that gets at in terms of like the power of art to create that kind of experience of connectedness. That's not just happening in the gallery because you planned it that way and you know what you're doing, although there is that. It first happened for you alone in the studio. And I find that, you know, really worth ruminating on, because to me that explains what some of the energy of the installation is, which is to say it's presenting, you know, tragic circumstances, and yet you don't leave sad from this show. And how is that possible? And I feel like what you just said about that is one of the things that makes that possible.
Thank you.
Wow. I am going to just say, because we didn't say this before, that I do think we're going to want to be taking questions, of which I'm sure the audience will have some. And that, I think, is a job for Christine.
Christine, you want to come into the conversation now?
Just to say, if there are questions, put them in the chat. And, you know, do feel free to do that. And maybe Christine can help us, you know, look at those. But yeah, so those, you know, a lot of that I think is, and then this will just be like the last thing that I definitely wanted to say, was that there's a whole other level beyond like the content, which I don't in any way, I'm not skipping over it, because I know that's what's driving the whole operation, but that there's also a lot of art historical ancestry happening in the work. You have, you know, the whole ethos of arte povera being very much not only about not wasting anything, but also a kind of a low-key political statement as well, about the value of discarded materials is a metaphor for the value of every human within the arte povera movement as well. Like, that was their deal. That's what that was for. And in large part. And then, you know, your Rauschenbergs and your, you know, your sort of Combine, a little, you know, Red Grooms with that sort of like folk infusion, the inventiveness of taking a wooden spoon and turning it into an oar, because it's the same thing, it's just scale, you know, so that there's these little moments of humor, just a little wit in some of the mediums. And you know, that being allowed, even though the topic is fraught. And so I just wanted to say that, you know, that is also something that is part of the appeal of the exhibition, is, you know, that legacy within art history as well.
Thank you.
There is a question from Jeanette. Were you inspired by Ai Weiwei, and if so, how?
I am aware of Ai Weiwei's refugee boat, that huge inflated thing that was at the, what was it called? The
Marciano?
Oh, it's the Marciano.
No, yeah. I respect Ai Weiwei very much, of course. There's a real difference in impact. Ai Weiwei's figures are all silhouettes on the refugee boat. It's a large inflatable, it's an immense inflatable object with these rubber people on it. And that has an effect. I mean, first of all, scale has an effect, but beside that, there is a shadowy, looming eeriness about it. I actually was doing this show before I saw that from him, so it wasn't like that propelled this. I think even though a craft on water is a craft on water, but there's a real difference when I'm specifying individuals as opposed to the abstraction that he was using, that he is using. No disrespect to him, it's just different.
I don't have any other questions yet. Does anybody else have any other questions?
They could maybe just talk out or,
Yeah.
or say something.
Yeah. Well, that's true. I'm all trying to tell you guys what to do, put it in the chat, blah, blah, blah. Just be yourselves.
I just want to know, Pam, what are you going to do now?
That's a really good question, Betsy. Actually, I have an answer to that.
Wow.
No, the part of the reason I have an answer to that is practical. I'm in the middle of writing my application for Creative Capital. If anybody's ever applied to them, it's horrendous. A million essay questions. Anyway, and it's asking that very question. So I really had to give it some thought. I give it.
Yeah, but and Pam, when they ask about the questions, you have to pare it down. You know, there was one question on there. I applied last year, the year before, and they didn't have that, you know, that limit on there. So I was just typing away. And then when I submitted it, they're like, oh, it has to be like 300 words.
100
like,
words.
really? You know,
Yeah.
what the heck?
You know, it's one heck of it's like, I dare you to fill out this application.
Exactly.
But anyway, so I had to think, because they asked very specifically about where you want to go. And I realized answering that I do know where I want to go with this. I want to add sound. I feel that this is all good, and I can always make more, and I can repair and refine what's already there, no question. And I can, you know, arrange it in a different pattern on a gallery floor or museum. And I hope those of you who own a museum would invite me to exhibit there. But I think this calls out for even more media. I have a feeling that I would like to script some voices in many languages and have them not a narrative, not somebody's going to stand up and give a story, but fragments of speech, fragments of dialogue, little phrases in many languages, and have those almost as whispers that are within the room. So that's one thing I'd like to do. I think some music would not be bad too. And then I need work on lighting. A lot of these are have roofs, so you have to bend down and look in it, and it's dark. And I'm no lighting expert, but I could maybe work with one. So there's things that can be done that way. I'm not sure beyond that. You know, some LA Art Documents is now making a video of what's here. And so that's good for documentation. I don't necessarily see film coming out of it at this point, but I do think expanding it just to more media, to the extent it does not take away from what's here. It has to serve it, it has to support it, and expand it without actually changing the nature of what it is. So that's
a great idea, though. I can imagine, because if what you want is to evoke something like God, I mean, to even say evoke something like the experience is like radically insane, because we're in a fancy art gallery on the Miracle Mile, get real. But that being acknowledged, that the idea would be to create some just more energy movement in the space with audio and visual cues, the sound of rushing water or wind, the sound of birds, it goes from dark to light because the sun comes up, little just atmospheric tweaks that wouldn't be like some crazy nonsense spectacle, but just to like enhance even more what the impulse towards using sculptural elements already is, right? That to take it even further off the canvas, not to aestheticize it in some like way.
Yeah. Sounds.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Sounds.
That sounds. I would do that. I would see that.
Designing with sound as well as with visual.
I think if you did that, you'd also be in conversation with some of the like Ed and Nancy Kienholz type situations, right? You know, that would also be just another you know, art historical ancestor for you to tap into, because they use sound and light, and that was rarely a good time. It was powerful, but it wasn't about fun, even though, right? Lights and
What was that
music.
name? I didn't.
So yeah, there's a lot there. Oh, the Keenholtzes, Ed and Nancy.
Oh,
I got
okay.
it, Pam. We'll talk
Um,
about it.
you know,
Okay.
but like that, you know, they, you know, the way that they did it, I think it, you know, is like a great match for what you're looking at, thinking about doing. Wow, I already want to go to that show. Hope you get the money.
You know, your lips to God's ears, as they say. I need, you know, I need backing to do any of this expansion, but you got to start somewhere, and then you don't know where it goes. So I started.
Excellent. And it went here. And I think we can all agree it's kind of an amazing place. Wow. Okay. First of all, that was 50 minutes, 50. We've been talking for almost an hour,
Wow.
which I cannot even believe, because that was so exciting. And so, I mean, I know you, and I've seen the show, and I still learned new things today. So thank you, Pam, for
Well,
everything.
thank you, Shana.
Why not?
Last
I think
call
why
for
not?
questions. Last call.
Pam, I have a question, if I may.
Yes.
Hi, this is Buena.
Hi, Buena.
How you doing?
Good.
Great show. It's so powerful.
Good.
I had to say something because you know that upcoming will be well after you. It's my show, but I'm stating that because mine is going to be dealing with similar subject matters of you know, injustices and things like that.
Uh-huh.
So my question is going to be about materials. So forgive me. I am just amazed and love that you moved away from just everything being framed or having to be matted and take it to a framer and whatnot. I love the natural rawness of you're using burlap and so forth. And I saw some of the burlap is black. I wanted to know if you painted that. And also the three-dimensional, are they mannequins, or did you actually build these, which is amazing? And just wanted to know something about your materials. And also, did you use paint to draw with, or what? I just love all the variety, and the impact is just almost got me emotional. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you, Buena. Let me take some of that. Once upon a time, I used to frame paintings. I discovered that suffocated them. It was a late discovery, and it doesn't hold for everybody. Some paintings should be framed. Sometimes it holds the stuff in the frame, and sometimes it's just right. So it's each to whatever it needs. For these, they just needed to breathe. I mean, there was no way I would want to enclose them in anything.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean you shouldn't frame yours. You know, really, works demand what they demand,
Exactly.
and I had to learn to stop framing, actually. Although I did frame some of those little tiny
Yes.
prints, but those are for sale cheaply, and somebody may want to take and put them on a wall, so it's practical. On the sculptural elements, there are no mannequins in the show. I do have substructures under the hands, which are pretty difficult, but they're clay. They're clay, and they're painted with acrylic.
Okay.
But the drawings themselves are drawings. There's no paint on them at all. They're charcoal. Little bit of chalk sometimes,
Okay.
pastel sometimes, but they're just charcoal drawings. There's nothing else to it.
Beautifully done.
There is acrylic on the hands are mostly gray. The hands and feet also are mostly gray.
Mhm.
And I'm doing that to be non-specific. You know, again, it's the universality. And what else did you ask? You asked one other thing.
The burlap.
Burlap.
Black burlap, which is, thank you for pointing that out. Those are, am I allowed to say that I have favorites? Yeah. Whatever. Those three pieces to me with that black burlap and the way and the wood and just all of it are like
Yes.
next level genius. So I'm so
Oh.
glad you asked about them, Buena.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
The burlap is mostly the used coffee bean bags. They are repurposed. They were given to me by somebody whose family is in the coffee importer business, and they had these left over. And she, Virginia Breuersma, advertised on the artist trading that, hey, I'm getting rid of these. Anybody want them? And I drove all the way out to Long Beach, which for me was a big trip, to get this enormous trove of these bags. I knew right away that that's what I needed to as an expression thing, not just as a surface, but as an expression of repurposing. There are stamps on those burlap bags. Some of them are location stamps, and some of them are weight stamps. And I like there's one 49 kilograms. That is the weight of the coffee beans that were in that bag. But I like it because it's as if it's saying this human being that is depicted is worth 49 kilograms.
Wow.
And it's the commercialization of valuing a person,
See,
which has in itself lots of historical resonance.
absolutely. Absolutely. So just so you know, I can't stop the tears coming out of my eyes.
Oh, sweetheart. Did I answer what you wanted to know?
But you did answer, and thank you for such a powerful show, and it's so meaningful.
Oh, thank you, Wayna.
Welcome. That was it. Yes.
Can't hear you.
Yeah, I got it.
Oh, I know. I was talking to myself. I was like, oh, damn, I know, right? It's so powerful. But then for you, no, it's true. And I think, I just want to congratulate you, Pam. I think it's a real success. I think the message comes through, but in my humble opinion, also the work, the choices you've made are a real breakthrough. Just, from that point of view, I think it succeeds critically and in terms of its intention. So, really well done, Jen. I think we all feel that way, but I just wanted to make sure you knew that we all get that this show is a big deal and that we're all really proud of you.
Thank you so much, Shana, and thank you so much for being here with me today.
What a
I
pleasure.
do have one final question, which I think is a great one to end on from Facebook,
Okay.
from Voislav from LA Art Documents. He said, since this was a huge project and long time process of creating this body of work, what did you learn from it and how has this project changed you?
The project has changed me tremendously. I had already started to go from being a two-dimensional artist to a three-dimensional artist a little bit, as Shana and I talked about the palm fronds, but this went all the way to try to understand that things have backs as well as fronts and sides. And that's a mind bend for somebody who had been a 2D artist for so long. So I grew from that, but I also grew in terms of letting go of stuff one after another after another. The first stuff was still wall hung and they were figures. Then the next one, were pieces that were physical that came out of a mural, but then it kept moving to becoming out into the world more and more and more. And I think that's where it's going. So this has been more than 3 years working on this. And I have grown with it very much. And I hope that continues because creative capital is going to give me a lot of money to put sound on it.
Good.
And,
Put those intentions out there.
yes, exactly.
Well, this has been great. I mean, it's powerful to see and to hear you talk about it. And I mean, the conversation, Shana, with you and Pam, I mean, just amazing. So you talked about, everything that we needed to hear about the project. So thank you so much for being here, Shana. And next Thursday at 3:00, it's Pam's birthday on the 11th.
Yes,
So there's one more like walk through. Her daughter is going to be joining us, I think, right?
exactly.
Yes.
It's not serious like today.
Yeah.
One of the interviewers will be 6 years old.
Yep. Yay. So it's going to be fun. So I hope everybody will join us then. And no, thank you everybody for being here. And thank you, Pam, for an amazing, powerful project.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming, everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Stay safe and
Bye.
healthy.
Bye.